Hello, my name is Philip Gomm. I come from England and I represent the Druid tradition. I help to lead the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids, which is the world's biggest Druid group. We have many thousands of members around the world. And this is the second conference I've participated in. The first one was in Nagpur several years ago, and here we are now in Haridwar, and I'm very happy to be here with you.
Sir, what about your tradition? Tell me something about your tradition. That is trade. What is this?
Okay, the Druid tradition is a name. The Druid tradition is a name for a tradition that started about 3,000 years ago, before the coming of Christianity to the British Isles. Julius Caesar wrote that the source point of this tradition was the British Isles, mainland, and that people would come from Ireland and France to learn and perfect their studies. And the interesting thing is there are many connections with the Vedic traditions and similarities in language, mythology, rituals and so on, which is why it's so interesting to make exchanges here in India. And we run a training program in Druidry that is published in 7 languages, in English, French, German, Dutch, Portuguese and Italian and Czech. And we have a program, because originally the Druid tradition was expressed orally before the invention of writing, we have a training program also on CDs with music, stories, meditations and so on.
Okay, sir. Just tell me about the present state of your tradition. What is the present scenario of your tradition?
Okay. Since over the last 20 years there has been a tremendous revival of interest in this. The first revival of interest was in the 17th and 18th century in Britain, when people started to become interested in their ancestors and the spiritual traditions that were in the country before the coming of Christianity. And so for the last 300 years there has been this revival of interest, but in the last 20 years there has been a great upsurge. And I think the reason for that is the increasing secularization of society and the consumer society, people getting tired of materialism and rationalism and reductionism. So people are turning to spirituality, but finding the big established religions not somehow satisfying their spiritual needs, and instead becoming interested in their own roots and traditions.
Okay, sir. Do you think there are any traits to your tradition? What are that traits?
Traits? Yes, particular characteristics. Yes. Okay, the particular characteristics of our tradition is a great reverence for nature, which is why I think it has experienced such a revival in recent years, because as we see, the natural world is coming under increasing threat because of overpopulation and resource depletion and pollution and so on. And so people are coming to realize with a shock how endangered the world is, and we're undergoing this period of mass species extinction where we're losing so many species of animals and plants and so on. And so people are waking up and realizing that the earth needs reverence, and that a spirituality shouldn't be about disconnecting from the planet, disconnecting from the earth, but quite the opposite, actually becoming more involved in the earth and Mother Nature. Some people think that spirituality is about escaping from life, somehow rising up to some celestial plane that is above this earth with all its sufferings and difficulties. But in the Druid tradition, spirituality is understood in a different way. The idea is that everything comes from deity, comes from God or the goddess, and therefore we must reverence all of life. And therefore spirituality is not about trying to escape, but quite the opposite, is trying to come fully into life and to treat everything with love and respect. Okay. In the UK, there is no official process of recognition of religions. People are free to recognize, people are free to practice any religion they like. So there's no question of seeking government recognition. However, we did make a big step forward a few years ago when a Druid group gained charitable status. Up until 2010, it wasn't possible for a Druid group to be a charitable trust. From 2010, the government body decided that Druid foundations could be eligible for charitable trust status. So that's a big step forward, I think.
Sir, we want to know that what is the unique feature of your tradition, how it is different from other traditions.
Okay, one of the unique features of the Druid tradition is it is able to embrace other traditions too. So we have people who are Christians and Hindus and Buddhists and Jains and Taoists who are also following the Druid way. So the Druid way is unusual in as much as, although some people practice it as their sole religion, many other people practice it as a kind of way of life that connects with the folklore and the traditions of the British Isles and northwestern Europe and the Celtic lands, but also is capable of combining with other spiritual ways.
Okay. Sir, do you see any correlation or connection of your tradition with Indian tradition?
Yes, there's a very strong connection between Druidism and the Dharmic traditions. And this could be as a result of migrations that occurred many thousands of years ago. There are 5 different theories about this. Currently, the most popular theory is that peoples from the Pontiac-Caspian region migrated south to India, north to Europe, and they use this to explain why there are these extraordinary similarities between, say, Old Irish and Sanskrit, between the reverence for fire in ceremonies, for instance, and so on. So the old classical authors wrote how Druids taught the doctrine of reincarnation, and so there are many similarities, but unlike your traditions here in India, which have been preserved for thousands of years, from our part of the world, from about the 6th or 7th century onwards, Christianity came to dominate the religious scene, and so for about 1,000 years we lost many of the traditions. So our job is different to yours in a way. Our job is piecing together elements of our tradition, and there's a good side to that, which is we don't have a weight of dogma and tradition that keeps us fixed. We are flexible and we can change. So we are very interested in learning from India and learning what you can teach us that can help us. We know that there are mass species extinctions occurring. We know that many plants and animals are dying out around the planet, and this is a great tragedy and sadness, and one of the most important jobs we can do today is try to redress this, change this imbalance that has occurred. But the same thing is occurring at a cultural level as well. Thousands of languages are starting to be wiped out too, and individual traditions are starting to be wiped out. And so it's important for individual groups of people who espouse small, particular types of culture that they should come together for solidarity and to show and demonstrate their culture, and also to learn from each other too.
So what are the factors which are disturbing this balance?
Okay, what are the factors that are disturbing this balance are 5 runaway trains, if you like. There are 5 trains that don't seem to have drivers, or the drivers have been drinking too much, and those trains are all coming towards us at the same time. And those 5 are overpopulation, mass species extinction, resource depletion. Resource depletion is running out of oil, water, and so on. Number 4, what's number 4? Pollution, the fact that we're polluting our landscape, and habitat destruction, the fact that we're destroying the habitats of fish in the sea and so on. So these are each one of these factors, climate change as well. Each one of these factors in itself is extremely serious and dangerous. But when you bring the 5 together, you have a very, very dangerous combination. So it's important for us to maintain hope, not be too pessimistic, otherwise we will drown under the weight of these different factors. So we have to maintain hope, but we also have to wake up and be realistic that this is very, very serious, and that we've come to a critical time in the story of humanity. Some people even believe we've come to the end of the book. I don't think so. I think we've come to the end of a chapter, but a new chapter we have to start working on is how the story will continue from here. Importance of youth participation. Absolutely vital, because we old people were going to go kaput soon, and we will leave the earth to you, and it's up to you guys to sort it out. So we and previous generations have made the mess, and we're leaving it to you to sort out. So it's very important that you become aware of this. And I think one of the biggest challenges, and the challenges that I see in India here, is this, is the West is so seductive, particularly the American ideals of the big car and the big swimming pool and the big television and all the rest of it. And of course it's perfectly natural to want to have these things. It's completely natural. However, if you really look at the story, you see that number one, it doesn't bring happiness. All the psychological studies of happiness show that there is no correlation whatsoever between material wealth and happiness. In fact, there's an inverse correlation. It's called affluenza. You know, influenza is a disease, yeah? Affluenza is the disease of too much money. And all the studies show that affluenza is toxic. So whilst it's natural to want to have all these things, this is not a good path to follow. Right? This isn't to advocate that you should stay in a country that isn't developed and that people should maintain the status of poverty and so on and so on. There has to be another way. Not consumerism, not materialism, not being stuck in the past with all the problems of poverty and degradation that comes from that, but a third way that somehow respects all of nature. Okay, my wish would be that the key ideas, these key ideas about supporting minority cultures and religious traditions, and should be somehow tied in with the current state of the world, because it's not sufficient to say we must try to preserve the status quo, because the status quo is being swept out from under our feet. So we can of course make some attempts to keep small communities going and all the rest of it, but the reality is this big tidal wave driven by these 5 or 6 drivers that I talked about. That's the reality of what's going on. So we have a challenge to somehow support various indigenous cultures and traditions, but at the same time be aware of the fact of this tidal wave. And so I would like to see more workshops, not so much delivering papers, because the problem of delivering papers is, for a start, papers are usually written in order to be read, and you can publish those on the internet and you can have a website and all the rest of it. So the fact that we're here in our bodies here now, the best way to use that is in a more participatory style of interaction, where you have workshop type setting, rather than, at the moment there's a strong influence of the traditional academic model of delivering papers and so on, and I respect that of course, but I think there would be more opportunity for exchange and creative solutions if a workshop model was adopted.